The greatest risk for this artwork, for the lifting of it, was that chunks of it would just come off. And it's not a thing that you often hear when installing artwork. It is a thing that happens though, like, how can we install this and do the least amount of damage?
This work is by Rafa Esparza. It's his 2017 work, New American Landscape, Self-Portrait, Catching Feelings, Ecstatic. So this work comprises a wooden frame, and it's filled with adobe, which is made out of sourced earth, sticks, hay, and dung.
Much of the surface is unpainted, but there is, very importantly, this self-portrait of the artist himself, as well as a pre-Columbian figurine that are both painted in acrylic.
There's also objects found on the ground, such as condom wrappers, sticks, and ropes. It's a little bit of a painting and there's a little bit of a sculpture. So Matt and I worked together on it to bring his expertise in the paint and how that application would sit on the adobe, and my expertise in the structural of the work.
So this is Rafa's first piece in Adobe. It was sort of a new material for him. He's continued to work in it since then, although in a different way. This being the first time that he worked in Adobe, it was very experimental. It's a material that has strong resonance for him personally. Rafa's father was a traditional Adobe artisan and builder, and Rafa learned the process of making Adobe from him.
And Rafa uses locally sourced materials, such as clay from the LA River.
So when it came time to approach the conservation of this work, it was really important to contact Rafa to get his feelings about what the priorities would be.
Yeah, we both talked to Rafa, and he told us that all of the large cracks that are here are okay to save and keep as is, because that was part of the making, part of the piece, part of the natural drying of the material. But especially through the portrait, he didn't want to lose any more than that. The work traveled flat from Rafa's studio in LA by truck to New York.
When we unpacked it, I mean, there was a lot of loss from the travel, from the vibrations that had come loose from the adobe. But those loose fragments then gave us a lot of material that we could test adhesives on, because we didn't want to apply adhesives directly to the surface and risk staining and damaging it. But because there were pieces that had fallen loose that we couldn't be put back in, it gave us the opportunity to test out different adhesives and different consolidants on a fragment that actually could be considered sacrificial.
So we went through our traditional conservation materials, polar, non-polar, and we settled on things that were thicker and water-based that would keep it in place without seeping into the artwork.
But under the face, underneath the paint, we had more options because we didn't have to worry about the staining at the surface. So there we were able to use more fluid adhesives that could sort of flow in and really saturate and consolidate that clay body a little bit better to help secure that in place.
This work will be included on the 6th floor in Whitney's Shifting Landscapes exhibition. This object needs to come out of its outer crate, and the long edge of it goes on top of the floor, and the front edge of it will rest against the wall. As it carefully is rotated, we're going to check to make sure that the artwork itself isn't twisting. We do also expect there to be some small losses during this, which we spoke to Rafa about, telling him that we're going to keep him updated so he could determine its conservation as well.
So the material is quite heavy. It also is quite brittle, so that's always a very tricky combination. So the process of lifting this out and moving it to the wall introduced a lot of possibilities for things to go wrong. We have an excellent team that I'm sure will minimize that, but we have to be prepared for any sort of eventualities.
Yeah, we'll be present there for our team to watch the install, to talk through with them, and also to check it throughout the exhibition.
The biggest challenges of this work are sort of twofold, or they're in a tandem. That is quite heavy, nearly 1,000 pounds, and that it is essentially made of mud to some degree, adobe, as it were. So it's fragile. and it does not have an internal structure that we know of. It's essentially a wooden box with dried mud in it. And our challenge was to get it off its back and lean it against the wall, which, like many artworks that we encounter, the installations seem straightforward, but of course are not straightforward. In this case, because the work does not have an internal structure, that means that it's quite flexible. And because of the weight, and because we hadn't lifted it, we did not know what would happen when we tried to lift it. So really the path to the solution in this case, and with many other artworks that we install that are heavy, it involves starting with solution one, seeing if any part of that solution works, and starting over with that part that works. And in this case, that took several days and many, many conversations, and essentially like an offhand remark from someone who was not directly involved in the project. Something like, why don't you just lift it from the frame? Which is a thing that, of course, became obvious as soon as we all thought about it. For much of the process of the installation, the work was parked right in front of where it was going, so that once we figured out how to lift it, we only had to travel perhaps 6 or 8 feet. In our case, we're going to use a forklift because 800 or 900 pounds is way too much even for a large group of people. The artwork was flat, so our first steps were get it out of the crate, get it off wheels, and get it to a point where we could deal with it. We bolted our frame to the front and back, sort of making a little bit of a sandwich, and the frame extended beyond the outer edges, the left and right edges. Then with these lifting straps attached to the ends and to the forklift, which was parked in front, we slowly tipped it up. And in this whole part, there's one person in the forklift, but there's at least 4 sets of hands on the piece itself, and plenty of eyes, twice that amount of eyes, watching to see that it was keeping its shape. Once we had the artwork nearly vertical, we began to drive the forklift forward and slide the piece forward at a snail's pace, as slow as we can get the forklift to go, basically. And then got it all the way to the wall, got the forklift unstrapped from the frame, and then let the work just rest against the wall where it was. In retrospect, I would say, of course, it was a success. The work was on the wall, it's safe. It took longer than I thought that it would, and we went through more solutions than I thought that it would. The loss, as far as I can remember, were pretty minimal. I fully expected something that you would call a chunk to come off, but it was probably something above the dust category. It sounds corny, but it's almost always a team effort. More people contributed than I could possibly count in some way. I would just have to say, oh, everybody was here, helped, because they did. But even if it just means that they just happened to be walking by and are able to offer a pair of hands when you need a pair of hands. That's always the way that it is, especially for works where the solution is almost unknown at the beginning.
Look at where to insert some things that had fallen out. He couldn't find them. Oh yeah. So he had re-mudded a lot of them. Also, so it's like the color